Perfect. Cheers. Thanks for that, Streets, mate. So, can you guys hear the sound now? I think Streets has turned on the tap, so to speak. But let us know if you can or can't. Can we get a sound check from the guys in the chat? Can you hear the sound, Penny? Matt? Yep. Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Okay, good stuff. So we're in business. Good morning, creatures, people, humans, white people. So yeah, obviously I missed the, I've been a bit poorly, feverish, missed the old conference. Can't wait for the wonderful stuff coming out. Just spoke to Mark. Apparently it was such a brilliant affair and tons of great stuff coming out. So hip hip hooray to that. So before we jump in, what I wanted to, because I always like to support the young nationalists who are up and rising, especially young ones. And Speaker's Corner is the ultimate bear pit. And I noticed one of our young owned by himself went in there. Obviously, people are keeping away, and he took one of the 4 or 5 big Muslim voices there, and he went on a long little two-part debate on nationalism, multiculturalism, all this good stuff. So I thought we should have a little look at that and have a little review. Why not? If people want to, I think I can let people in if they want to later. Let me turn off my Telegram sound 1 second. So but before that, I thought, why not have a quick look at the bleating from the opposition? Because Mark mentioned that, our favorite friends, people like anti-white Steve, or is that metrosexual Steve? I forget, Tel Aviv Steve. They've been bleating about, that the PA conference may be an abject failure. So let's have a look at our enemies. Something about Muslims and toilet paper, boring. Aha! Here comes some good people. Is black the new white? So here we go. Steve immediately goes in and he tries to make a kind of off-the-cuff joke about the use of the color black, that he's not the most fashionable people. And he seems really upset that there you have a very successful conference with hundreds of people. There were more people who attended than there were tickets for it. People sneaked in. I mean, it was effectively oversubscribed. And here you have the great Shazia with Dion, Secret Sources, Mark and Lucy Brown. And this is really getting up their goats, isn't it? So let's have a look at the first tweet, just to keep everyone happy. So he comes in with his rather off the cuff, it's black the new white, not double question marks, just a single one, no two. Punctuation, Steve. Learn to create and construct English sentences. I know you want to give England away, but can you at least not give the English language away while you're at it, mate? So it's black the new white. So Shazia tweets, true patriots supporting Mark at his outstanding conference. Well done to you and Laura. So clap, clap, clap. Well done, Mark and Laura. It was a fantastic success. People say it was amazing. So that's really good. Only 1 retweet and 5 likes. So what's that? 45 times more people actually attended the conference than Steve's social media reach. Go Speaker's Corner, who is a Muslim, wanders around. Lucy Shazia, where's Tommy? You can see, of course, that this guy, who's not a very high IQ northern chap, has not actually understood the difference between Tommy Robinson and the rest of us. Tommy Robinson is not a nationalist. Everyone else is. Is Ralph not allowed in the photos? I wonder why. Someone hoping maybe that's something to do with some racial thing. I would have been standing there proud beside all of them, but I couldn't because I've not been well. So that's the only reason I'll tell Sam about that. When was this? Show more replies. No, get over it. Black will never be the new white. You can see the hysteria here. In we come with Fleet View. More Tommy Tards. Wow, Nazi, Jew hating, Holocaust denying, and a blonde girl who goes whichever way the wind blows, all in one place. Would you buy a used car from this lot? Again, double exclamation marks, double punctuation at this time is incorrect. Do we expect you to save England when you can't even construct correct English sentences? Good Lord, perhaps more reading and less writing, or should I be more reading and less tweeting? Hardly the pride of Britain. 2 double exclamation marks again. Hardly the pride of the English language. Who the hell is Fleetview? We'll have a look at him. Dan, bit diverse for PA, considering they want a more white England. Meaning what? Whose funeral was this? So you can see inside this, inside these messages are just bitter, jaded responses. Bitter, jaded responses because they were not included. They were not part of this. So what else happened in this message? Any more replies? No. One more reply here from Sam. PA fan tweeted, Tommy's women belong to Mark now. This explains why Ralph is into the pic. So again, a bitter, jaded response from the Tommy Tods. For some reason, they believe it's literally about taking people as women. Unfortunately, Athena are not available to any women in that photograph or anyone else, but I'm sure they're all terribly disappointed. So there you go. You can see a bitter, jaded, left out and excluded as their little sham of their little attempt to form a counter movement, integrity, heart of coke, means nothing. The real nationalists are here. Well done to Mark and Laura for organizing what seems like a fantastic thing. What kind of reach was this? 8 comments, 1 retweet, and 5 likes. Bit dismal, right? Bit dismal. So you can see why they have nothing to say, and there's nothing they can do to win, and and there's nothing they can. Sorry, Betty. I'm not. Cheers, no, but I'm feeling a bit better. But I'm on a short leash, so I'm allowed to do a little bit on the computer and stuff. I'm not meant to. I'm sort of sneaking this in for the calls. So hi, hello, Steph, and everyone else. So, but the main event is a young nationalist defending his position. You know, I always talk about grooming young men and how well they're doing. Let's have a look and let's see. A little bit of background history here of the young Nats running around in the corner and stuff. We've consolidated a good movement, a good bunch of people. As one would expect, we're usually together in a collective, and they never approach us when we're collectivized. But of course, if there's no one around, in this case, I think not many people were there from the Nats, they pick on the people they can alone, and then they try to gang up on them and bully them. They've done this multiple times. So what we're going to see is an example of this attempt to bully a young Englishman trying to stand up for England. So let's, without further ado, let's go into Jacob, one of our wonderful young chaps, who I hope to introduce at some point to Harry and people like Barclay. So let's share the screen. Let's see if we can get into the first part of this, because it's worth listening to the argumentation, see what was done well and bad. Let me double check. Everything is working okay in terms of the, because we're cross-streaming across 2 machines here, so I want to make sure it's all going through for the, let me make sure this comes through right. And let's see if the sound comes through. Excellent. So let me know if the sound comes through in the audio. And this chap over here, there's 4 or 5 of the top Muslims potentially in the corner in terms of at least their ability to argue or, try to sell Islam, etc., or attack Christians. And this is Jacob over here. And this is going to be part 1, colonization and anti-Islam, Hashim and Jacob from Speaker's Corner. This is one angle, though there might be a better one. So if you bear with me a second, actually, chaps, let me change my mind, actually. Let me choose a better angle. And bear with me a second, guys, because there are multiple cameras, and this one is actually better for multiple reasons. So I'm going to just toggle the screen. Let's share this one instead. That's what happens when you get infected by all these foreign diseases and foreign people. Stranger by Kipling. So let's see if this comes through. Morning, everyone in the chat. Morning, Shell, Betty, all the wonderful ladies, Penny, Timmy. Okay, so that's coming through all right. Let's move this over here. Okay, should be good to go. So, don't know who these 2 new Brits are, but this guy here is going to try to argue against nationalism, and he's a Muslim evangelist, for lack of a better word. This is young Jacob, a good egg, person I consider a mate of mine. Let's see how Jacob does against a very experienced Muslim debater, twice his age. Let's go.
They colonized the country at a loss. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying they went out to do it a loss. I'm saying it ended up being that way. Of course, they didn't go, oh yeah, let's make ourselves poor.
No, but did they benefit from it or not?
I would say very minimally. I would say
minimally, really?
Basically,
I don't think you have read the history.
I think I have actually.
Okay, so
that's fine.
So what you're saying?
I recommend you look at alternative hypothesis blog.
If you look at the East India Company, how it actually ended up becoming.
Okay, the EIC is not Britain. Sorry, I interrupted. Please.
It's not Britain.
EIC is not.
Where was it based? Where was the headquarters based?
That doesn't matter. It's a corporation.
No. Where was that headquarters based?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It doesn't. That's like saying.
So let me get this right.
So Google.
So if a company.
Hang on. Is Google the? Okay, I'll let him talk.
If a company is based and registered in England,
yes,
it is not an English company.
No, it's not England. I'm not.
It's not England. So where is it?
You said,
no. Of course, it's not England, but it's an English company.
I know. All I said.
The name itself says.
I said the EIC is not equivalent, is not tautologically equivalent to the British Empire. That was my point.
I didn't say it was the British Empire.
Okay.
It colluded with the British Empire.
Yes, that's true.
And you're saying that doesn't matter.
I know. I'm saying.
So if you collude with a terrorist, are you not a terrorist?
A false analogy right there. So let's get the organizational structure right in our heads here. The East India Company was one of the commercial wings of the success of the Industrial Revolution. And of course, it had a rich relationship with the king at the time. And of course, it was providing coffers, headquarters based in London, and the heart of that was out of Calcutta in India, which is where the economic success flew from the East India Company. My advice to Jacob and others is going to be you don't mess about with this topic, you just own it. You don't apologize for imperialism. You don't apologize to the British Empire. You double down and say, oh, gosh, of course, the East India Company was not just economically good. It was great. It was regal. It was imperial. That's what I would say.
That depends.
It's a good analogy. Do you not think?
It's a reasonable analogy.
It's a realistic analogy.
It's a terrible analogy because the assumption underpinning the analogy is terrorism bad, therefore collusion with terrorism bad. Terrorism, of course, is defined as the use of violence for its political means, and the East India Company was doing so for commercial reasons, not political. That morphed much later, about a century and a half later. So the analogy is flawed, Mr. Hashim.
Analogy, because that is exactly what happened during 9/11. You know why they invaded Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Because
they
thought that Osama bin Laden actually was given shelter by Afghan people.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's the reason they had every right to destroy Afghanistan, just for that reason.
Yeah.
Now I'm saying the East India Company, which colluded with the empire, with the king, and then they actually overtook India. So they went on the pretext of trading with India.
Yeah.
Yes. At that time, India was basically India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all these countries were
yeah.
one country.
Yeah.
Yes, and then they plundered that country to its bones, basically. And
That's actually not really.
Emotional language notwithstanding, there is a deeper intellectual problem with this, and they try this a lot. And this is how Islam has wiggled its way into the West. It has done so by making false allies with the liberals and claiming equality, claiming a Muslim is equal to a non-Muslim, a black is equal to a white, a Jew is equal to a Muslim, an Indian is equal to a Chinese person. And under this guise of liberal equality, the Muslims who themselves are not liberal, remember Islam is extremely far right. Muslims themselves don't believe this, but they're going to constantly mount the argument, we must be treated the same, therefore parity, parity, parity. The only way to really intellectually destroy this is to reject the foundational principle of equality and say, no, this is England, I'm English, and you're not. And therefore, this idea you have of equal treatment only holds if you're a liberal. If you're not a liberal, and Jacob is not, then you don't have to even defend this argument. Just say, oh, yes, but why are you asking for equality? Equality is an Enlightenment liberal value, and I'd reject it out of hand. I reject liberal equality, and therefore I reject your argumentation, right?
Well, you go look it up and you'll see the reason why this country, which had the highest GDP before the colonialists came, yes, they actually.
Okay, sorry.
Let me finish. And by the time they left, they had actually plundered the country to such an extent that they are suffering to this day for what happened to them during the colonialist period.
Nonsense. This is backed up. This can be destroyed equally by two different sets of argumentation. And good on Jacob to reference Ryan from the alt-type, but there's many pieces of work that show this is not true for multiple reasons. First of all, the assumption is that the economic GDP that was a relative of India was doing very well before the empire anyway. And would it have done better without industrialization from the West? Would India have grown at the same rate if it had not come into contact with the West? It's pure speculation. And within it is a tacit assumption that the Indians would have replicated the Industrial Revolution. There's no evidence India was going to replicate the Industrial Revolution. If it had not been invaded, it might have done a remote copy and paste because it had more than enough capacity to do so. But nevertheless, this is pure speculation because that's not what happened. The second important point where they try this bullshit on the East India Trading Company is they say, well, India's GDP as a percentage of the world was much larger and then it fell. Jacob's aware of this, being fallacious, and calls them up again and says, no, because the India's percentage GDP as a percentage of the whole only fell because the rest of the first world industrialized, followed by Japan, Korea, and China. So he's going to try these fallacious arguments. Jacob misses the deeper point about just destroying this, just refusing to accept liberal equality out of the bat. Just reject it. When someone comes up to you with a liberal argument, be it a Muslim, be it a liberal, says, hey, I want to be treated equally, the correct response is equality is a liberal product from the Enlightenment, and I reject it. I reject equality. I'm an Englishman in England, and nothing is equal to me. The only thing equal to me is another Englishman in England. Nothing else is equal to me. Given that this man's not English, this guy's Ukrainian, he's obviously not English, and this man isn't, none of these four people are equal to Jacob. All arguments based on liberal equality should be rejected at their fundamental core. This idea of equality is an abstract idea imposed upon society since 1642 in Locke's writing in Somerset. So since the treaties in Somerset, in England, this liberal equality, which was meant to be for English people, does not extend to the rest of the world. This is a liberal concept, and you can reject it out of hand. It's being absurd and just don't even entertain it. Just say, I'm not a liberal. I don't accept equality. I don't believe people are born equal. This is England. It belongs to me because I'm English. You're not. Therefore, there's no equality argument.
Okay. Now, the people of India just suffer. Do you not agree?
Of course yes, they do. No one denies it.
Yes, and under the British rule.
A little not known fact, more people were killed, more Indians were killed by Muslims than World War II, the Stalin, the communists, and the fascists put together. Notice how the Muslim is not quick to jump up to say that the Muslims killed something like 800 million in the total time, something like 700 million people over the entire period of the occupation of 7 and 8 centuries. They butchered Muslims, butchered most of the Hindus there, which of course the Indian government's never going to forget, right? But this idea again of false equivocation, a lesson to anyone, young people arguing, reject liberal equality and reject any past accountability for any such acts. He was not in the East India Trading Company, so his ancestors may or may not have a responsibility argument to talk to the Indians of that time. Jacob doesn't, and you're standing in England, and none of you people are English.
Yes, they did something. So colonialism is a very bad thing. It is not.
That's just a statement.
Something that I'm not saying the countries did not benefit from it. Of course, there was some benefit. Yes, but I think they lost more than the benefit. For example,
you could argue that.
The benefits I say is like maybe they had this transport system, postal system, education system. These things were instilled, and I think they still are proud of those. So if you go to India and places like that, they're still part of their Victorian schools and so on.
It's the railways that everyone like me picks up.
But that was a good thing that happened because of. But do you know why those things were there in the first place? It was to benefit the Raj.
Yes.
So the postal system benefited the Raj, the transportation system, and also the education system. However,
just like the Muslims are over here to benefit Islam, you're here to benefit yourself, you're here to benefit your ethnic in-group, and to the wider collective known as the Ummah. You're only here in an imperial fashion because Islam is imperial to benefit yourself and Islam. So if you hold that standard that says the British people only went to India to benefit themselves, like this is an accusation that needs to be defended, there's nothing to defend, right? I mean, there was nothing to defend. A superior culture ran into a culture that was not as advanced and was hegemonistic. If you say that is wrong morally, then you need to immediately leave and take Islam with you. But you're not going to do that, right?
the majority of people.
Notice again the people around here. There are 4 or 5 cameras here in a circle, and young Jacob, like the boy who stood on the burning deck, is standing by himself. Good job, Jacob.
In poverty,
Impoverished.
yeah, you were impoverished by the Raj. Yes, they are. I think their progeny is still suffering to this day because of what happened to them during. Now you tell me, Bishop, what I just said.
Right. There was a lot of. Okay, so, thank you. I apologize for this much. So the claim, just because you quickly said first thing about GDP, which GDP was so high before before the Raj. Okay, and then it just goes out. That's actually only sort of half true. So GDP as a percentage of the world, like proportion of world GDP, was much higher before percentage of world
India,
GDP. Of India. Before colonization. Okay, what you're not taking into account is that actually other world economies, so like it still grew. Okay, like as a proportion of the world GDP, it shrunk, but as GDP, like as an absolute, it still increased. So the reason it went.
Jacob is absolutely correct. So India's GDP is very large because of the large assets it has and still has. Right now that the empire has gone away and India has been independent since 1947, it is now heading to be the 3rd richest country in the world in a matter of short course between China and the United States. So the question, however, and this is the false argument that Jacob does very well to pick up is, but if you look at the relative ratio of the GDP, what share the total pie, India was only a large share there because of its natural resources. But at that time, 16th, 17th century, the Industrial Revolution was only really kicking off. So you just had the real economic benefits, would take about a century to be felt in England first, and then the rest of the world, meant the rest of the world was just going to accelerate forward, and India was just going to grow at its normal rate until it was intervened with. So this fourth argument that you frequently hear from this post-colonial or non-white people going, you interfered with us and you made yourself rich, wrong. We would have been richer without you, wrong. None of this is substantiated by economic data.
Down as a proportion is because the Japanese
And I'm sorry if that hurts people's feelings, but it's just the case.
economy went like that, and the Chinese economy went like that, and European economies are still, shooting up. So India becomes less proportionately of world GDP, not because they got done over by Britain, but just because loads of other global economies were doing much better, right? Is that fair to say?
No, it's not, because the manufacturing did not.
And this is not just fair to say, it's actually absolutely correct. And for those who like to reference these things later, let's just do a little screen toggle. Let me stop my screen there. Let's share this, and let's just substantiate what was said by the colonization wealth. Let's have a look. So here's the argument in a single table. If I took a colonization index, let's make sure this comes through all right to the screen. If you look at the colonization index, which is how many people did one person colonize by the population division, you see the best colonizing nation in the world was Britain. It had a 10.46 colonization index. So one Brit was ruling 10.5 people. The nearest second best divisions were Holland, France, and Belgium. But if you look at the per capita GDP of the colonizing countries versus the non-colonized ones like Sweden, Luxembourg, Switzerland, etc., you notice they did a lot better after the 1970 economic data can be calibrated, because that's when Germany's figures become truly available on a normative basis in economics. You look and you go like, hang on, the UK didn't do as well if it had not colonized. So this hypothesis that somehow Britain is only rich because it colonized, or Britain would have not been rich if it had not colonized, is absolute poppycock. Second Jacob's point that's really good, if you look at the, I don't know if you have this chart over here, it may be over here. If not, let's have a quick look. I wonder if this one has it here. If not, we'll find it in a second. But a really good chart. Well, there you go. This is exactly the chart. So if you look at the Berlin Conference, right, that's roughly 1870, right? So we look at decolonization starts, right, where they start considering how to decolonize. The intellects in 1870. So for a little bit of history, 1870 is what? 20, 30 years after 1848, you got the publication of the Communist Manifesto over here. The modern left, if you like, start taking over. Communism starts taking over the liberal idea. Decolonization follows about 60, 70 years later, and decolonization is roughly complete by 1970s, by which we mean most of the countries in the world are no longer colonies. At the same time, if you look at the curve, if you look at the GDP per capita relative to other ideas, you see Japan, China, India all picking up. But look at the space of the other countries picking up, South Korea, Zimbabwe, Botswana. This idea that colonization was the factor that stopped the other countries would mean that you would not see these spikes, and these correlate precisely to the decolonization history. And if you look at the previous table, you can see again that that doesn't hold in terms of. So the two fundamental theses that Britain got rich in the back of the third world is wrong, because it would have been richer if it had not. Though it had resources from the third world that dwarfed if it had not intervened. And this idea that the other countries were held back because they were colonized, all you have to do is compare the colonized countries to the non-colonized, you see that's also false. So this again is the narrative, white man bad, colonization bad, nonsense. Jacob's having none of it, right? Good man, Jacob.
For example, cotton was produced in India. Okay. Yes. Most of the cotton was actually exported to Britain. So the clothes were manufactured and then sold back to the Indians at a much higher price. So instead of benefiting the people, like, the reason I'm using colonialism,
that's
because
I'm glad you are.
Because before, the Muslims, before the United Nations, the Muslims used to conquer countries as well. Yes, so I'm not saying that it was only the prerogative, it was only something that the British were involved in. many other nations, yes, they used to go and they used to take over.
And that's how it was. That's
that was
how
the,
it works.
exactly. That
In
was
fact-
the
in
norm.
fact-
That was the norm.
Mohammed Hijab put this in a really nice way. He said this existed in a sort of climate of what international relations
Yes.
scholars call realism. This is the realists' paradigm of how global
So if you were
relations work.
stronger than another country, they would just take a flag and hoist it in that country.
Mike
and they
makes
say,
right.
That's
You know,
mine.
this
Yeah,
is the
mine
medium
was-
dialogue.
yes.
Thucydides.
However, if you look at the history wherever Muslims went,
Yeah.
that country actually prospered. So
I'm saying the same for the
so
British.
when they went
I'm saying the same
when
for
they
the
went to
British.
Spain or
Yeah.
when they went to India, it actually prospered, and they did not take things back to that country to benefit their country.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So this was when you look at history, this is what
I'm not an expert in Islamic history, but even cursory understanding of Islamic history says that's poppycock, right? They took people back, they took soldiers back, they took women back, they took slaves back, they took resources back, even as far as the Ottoman Empire, as recently as the Ottoman Empire. So this is just absolute rubbish. Why does anyone believe this nonsense you're trying to say, right? But anyway, meta point, we don't have to apologize for anything in the past. And you cannot make an economic argument that the Brits got rich in the back of slavery, and you cannot make the economic argument that India suffered because of intervention. The arguments don't hold up just by economics.
I see. But when you look at wherever the Europeans went, whether it's the Portuguese or the Spanish or the English, yes, they actually completely sucked most of the resources of those countries, and they did not benefit much the local communities. And they destroyed look at most of Africa and Asia today. The reason they were impoverished is because of the resources.
No, that's not true.
Africa and Asia, they've got really good resources in terms of like gold and diamond and minerals and I don't know, iron ore, everything.
They've also got,
everything
they're
you
also
can think of.
genetically different from us.
What's
Are
that
you one of
What's
those
that
people?
got to do
Wait,
with this?
wait, are you one of those people who
Are they humans?
if it hasn't been to college? Of course they're humans. Are you one of those
How are
people-
they genetically
Wait, what do you mean? How are black people genetically?
I mean, the guy over here who's black, the white guy over here is R1A, R1B, the Ukrainian who's R1A, and you who are a mixture, I guess, between a R1S1, because I can't quite tell completely if you've got admixture from the Muslims, but I can tell by your morphology, none of you are genetically equal to each other. Even the two white guys are sufficiently different. Notice Pavlov's different bone structures and the morphology, and look at Jacob's. You can just see the R1A, R1B difference. Are you saying these people are genetically the same? Or are you lying? Or are you practicing Takia? Which is it? The four people in this shot are not genetically equal. The nearest genetic distance are these two, and they're sufficiently genetically different. Sufficiently. Can't you tell the morphology? Can you see the difference? Can you see the inside bone structures? Or for you, you're different, right? Why are you lying? Race is real.
Different from white people.
What, they got more melanin?
Yeah.
Sorry, than you.
Okay.
A common myth. Skin color doesn't even make the top 20 or 30 characteristics of racial difference. It's nothing to do with skin color. It's much deeper than that.
How is that genetically different? Do they have the same genes or different genes?
Wait, you think that skin differences in skin color, you don't think that's genetic?
No, I'm saying in terms of being a human,
Yeah.
how does it differentiate them?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
What do you mean, how does it differentiate them? If your biology is different, everything about you is different. Have you noticed the differences in sports, in academic performance, in IQ, in food, in taste, in colors? Everything is different. You would have to make the claim that there's no difference, and you'd have to back that by science. But you can't do so, right? You can't give me a reason why a 20,000 long string of DNA with different DNAs exhibit the same behavior. Where is the magic in cellular biology? Where's the magical layer in science where the genetic difference just equates to nothing and becomes the same? You would get a Nobel Prize if you could ever show me that.
Like you are a human, a black man is a human.
Oh no, of course it doesn't make. Of course, the skin pigmentation doesn't
So what
make
do you
it any
mean?
less a human.
Why did you bring genetically different? Just
Because
skin pigmentation, that's it?
No, it's obvious. I'm saying that's one.
Notice the disingenuous argument by the Muslim. He equivocates genetic differences for skin difference. He equivocates genetic difference for skin color, though he knows very well the difference is much more than skin deep. We're not just all human beings inside. We are fundamentally axiomatically different. We might have things in common. After all, 96% of our DNA is shared, but the tiny percent of the DNA that's different is enough to make the two white guys even morphologically different from their structures. IQ variation, blood level differences. If I drew a blood map, just the blood type, right? You would see the blood type differences between two white people and definitely between brown people and two black people. The onus is on you to show me why they're the same. At what point does the biology stop and the magic start, Mr. Hashim?
An example of a genetic difference.
Are you one of those people who consider black people to be less intelligent than you?
I think that there are IQ differences between racial groups. Not, of course, not all black people. It's a stupid thing. So Thomas Sowell is smarter than me. Okay, Neil deGrasse Tyson is smarter than me. Okay, plenty of white people are stupider than plenty of black people.
I'm glad you said that.
Of course, yeah.
So let's not discriminate.
Notice how he says he's glad, he stays there, creates a false straw man argument, runs away from the argument, and doesn't answer it. So your initial propositional claim is, why did you bring up genetics? Is there any difference? Yes, look, you're morphologically different. Or are you saying we're not the same equivalently? No, we know IQ is a phase-shifted curve. He then hears the answer, doesn't like what he hears, walks away from his own propositional claim, and then says, I'm glad you said that. You mean you're glad you ran away from it? Because I wasn't there, no one else was there to hound you, and Jacob is impeccably polite. We like our young men in the right to be terribly polite, and Jacob, as I know him well, is a man of excellent manners. You are very disingenuous, though, or dumb. I think disingenuous.
Them based on
I'm
their
not.
genes.
I'm not.
Because
That's not discrimination. I'm sorry.
even the skin color. Even the skin color.
I'm not discriminating against any. Well, discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, you discriminate every time. You discriminate on who you wish to talk to. I've discriminated.
I don't.
No, yes, you do. I discriminated against everyone else right now in favor of talking to you because I could be talking to someone over there.
Yeah, but you did it by volition. I didn't force you.
No, I'm not saying it's forced. I'm saying it's a good thing.
I wouldn't. By the way,
willing discrimination.
by the way, choosing your interlocutor is not something I consider as discrimination. It's a choice not based on your skin color or that you are of a different culture. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Discrimination actually implies.
No, it doesn't.
If I choose, to
It
talk
has
to,
connotations today.
For example, if I choose not to talk to someone who's obnoxious, would you consider that discrimination?
Yes. That's in a good way. I wouldn't.
How can it be discrimination if I don't want to?
Because literally the word is discrimination, which is the verb for discriminant, which is to discern and to differentiate. And you could choose the differentiating axis to be anything. I could, for example, refuse to speak to short people. I would just say, look, in my life, I never want to speak to short people, and I'm going to discriminate on the basis of height. That would be discrimination, and there's nothing moral about it, unless you are a liberal and you say, I must tolerate all differences and make them equal, but you, of course, are not liberal, you're Muslim. And the word kuffar applies to anyone who doesn't believe in your version of God. So you are discriminant. And Jacob, that's why I should have asked him, so do you discriminate against non-Muslims?
Talk to a fool.
Because you discriminate against people who are less intelligent. Why would you not?
No. A fool necessarily not less intelligent.
A fool. Yeah, sure. Okay.
He might be obnoxious for many other reasons.
I'll give you that. Right. I discriminate against unpleasant people every day.
Exactly.
Everyone
But
does.
I wouldn't use the term discrimination.
I would. I guess that's a semantic difference.
It's basically your choice to speak to someone that you feel comfortable with.
For me,
all
that's
it is.
for me, that's
It's
what
not
discrimination is. Okay, for me, I think we're defining discrimination.
Discrimination is like, for example, if it's something prejudicial, then I would consider that to be.
No. Stop trying to tell the Englishman how to use his own language. Prejudice is prejudgment. It's not the same as discerning or discrimination. They're two different words. This man is an Englishman and he's quite good at language. You're not. He's obviously under a bit of pressure because you can't see this on the camera angles, but he's surrounded by people. This man has 4 mics on him, 3 or 4 large Muslim channels trying to gang up on the young nationalists. Pavlov, of course, is not getting involved because he's smart to keep out of these. Pavlov always keeps out of all of these conversations because he's yet to disclose his hand.
Discriminatory.
I
if you do
agree.
not have any logical reason to talk to someone, then that would be discriminatory.
Yeah.
Yes, but I wouldn't consider not talking to someone who is obnoxious or who swears all the time, or who might be smoking in front of me when I don't like someone smoking in front of me or blowing smoke in my face or something like that. I wouldn't call that discrimination.
I would. And in fact, you say, oh, I would. I think
Then we differ in our.
yeah, we're differing in our semantics, but I also say the same about prejudice. Okay, I think that prejudice,
sorry, where were we?
prejudice is not a bad thing. You know, like. Anyway, sorry.
So what about
you brought this up because I mentioned genes, and I just said it's not a racist thing to say that of course different cultures are like different peoples with different genes are going to build different cultures. Of course they are. Like, why would you have any reason to think otherwise? Why would you have any reason to think that Africans who
But
genetically
isn't that positive? Let's say you bring all these good things in a different cultures and then you work together. Wouldn't that be something that
Notice how Hashim moves away from the propositional axis, which is scientifically correct. It says different genetics create different tribes of people. When left alone in evolutionary divergence, have created different cultures. Whether, of course, these cultures can share common abstract principles like human rights or the belief in God or the ability to measure the stars is separate from the foundational science. It says they've evolved separately, and we know this by looking at the evidence across the historical record. When you put people with certain culture, with certain genetic tribes, they go ahead and create the cultures that their tribes have created. Abstract ideas, Enlightenment ideas, philosophy, religion, all of these things are downstream from biology, right? But you ran away from that. I noticed you ran away from it because it would be very, very difficult for you to defend it. And young Jacob, being impeccably polite, did not follow you. Of course, that's because he's terribly polite. I would have been less polite, right?
in the same country, the same geographical country. No,
might be in the same city?
No, oh, I don't want that.
And why is it?
Look at London. It's
What's
probably
wrong with London?
London.
Look at what's wrong with London right now. You have one Englishman left here, and he's surrounded by lots of Muslims on this side, lots of non-whites who are Pavlov as they're visiting Ukrainian, and look at the looks in him. Why do you think he doesn't want that? It's not comfortable for him. It isn't his own. It isn't his. Even though this is all of his, this culture around him, this culture is not his culture. You're not of his culture. You're closer, but you're still not of his culture. You're not of his culture. And this is his culture in a royal park in the capital city of his land and his people. And you want him to give that away? But you're a Muslim, so you would know, for example, that you protect everything from the initial hadiths, the translations, as yours. You don't want to give it away. You claim that Islam is, the Quran and everything is, and the hadiths and all the records are non-corruptible, right? Right? But you don't want to give away your holiness, but he's meant to give his away. What part of piss off don't you understand?
The NHS. How many white people run it? What I'm saying is that if you remove all...
Notice where he laughs, mocks. How many white people run it? Notice he doesn't say English people. He says white people. He didn't say how many English people run it. He says how many white people run it. So it doesn't take very long when you scratch beneath the veneer for the actual racism to come out that it's fundamentally anti-white. He didn't say how many English people. He said how many white people. So he sees white people as a monolithic racial group that he doesn't belong to, and he's anti-white, and then laughs at how many white people will. Well, white people built the NHS entirely by themselves without anyone else. The fact that 30-odd% of the top doctors are Indian, not Muslims, Indians, right? 30% of all the top positions are Indians, doesn't mean anything. They could be deported and white people would take their place and the NHS would survive. It might take a hit, but I'm sure the English doctors, after all, most of modern medicine was invented where? England. Where's all the top medical research in the world come from? England. Who invented epidemiology? An English woman. Everything you see around you is created here by the English. You think if the brown doctors or the black nurses went away, that the English NHS would collapse? Sounds more like wishful thinking. But notice the way you wanted to punish him and then gloat. You wanted to punish him by saying, "Oh no, if you get rid of us, your thing will collapse." And how many white people run it? It doesn't take very long to show that you're twice as racinated, twice as collectivized, not as open-minded. The only difference is it's not your land; it's his land. Yeah, you can't avoid that. You've tried to avoid it and wiggle it, but it's not your home, right? Why didn't your culture that's also equal create the NHS? Is there an NHS in Pakistan? How much has Pakistan contributed to world medicine? If I plotted every citation graph in PubMed, to those who don't understand, PubMed is the meta index journal for all medical data. If I took the PubMed citation graph, which I know quite well, if I took the PubMed citation graph, I expect it to be dominated by Pakistanis. No.
All the ethnic minorities from there,
I don't want to
the
do that.
NHS will probably collapse. And so is the
Probably collapse and then immediately be reconstructed. It was built without immigrants. If it collapsed, it would be reconstructed without immigrants. Don't try this blackmail and this kind of emotional rhetoric to hide the fact that this is really just anti-white messaging, right?
the transport system.
Yes, I think the NHS
What I'm
could do
saying
with
is
a lot
that
of reforming.
the NHS and the transport system here, and many other systems in this country, I think they work quite well when we integrate all the different cultures together. They bring in their own specialities. They bring in their own variety, I would say, and that is a good thing.
I think it's not. So let me just clarify. Nobody.
Let's forget the restaurants.
Yeah.
The English people.
Oh,
love the
yeah.
Indian
Oh, the food. Multiculturalism. We can have curry while our culture's dying.
How many days you gonna have fish and chips? By the way, do you like curry?
I love curry.
So what? The English have the recipes, right? You can be polite, and Jacob's impeccably right, but you could kick every Indian out of the country, and English people would be able to make Indian food without the Indians. Is that all you have to offer? A fabulous range of restaurants.
Back to topic. Yeah, so I should just say, nobody in the nationalist movement that I know of denies that, like, foreign people or foreign-born people, work hard.
Not only work hard, bring benefit to them.
Some do, not all.
What do you mean some?
I
I would
would
say
say
the same thing
it's
with
a
the English people then.
Yeah,
Some English people
I would
benefit,
say,
some don't.
I would say
like this about every person.
Okay, so I would say, regarding colonialism, generally the trend is
colonialism.
economic, just briefly, economic benefit, psychologically awful. Okay, because you're robbing,
Whoa.
you're robbing
Not
Indians
just
of their sovereignty.
psychologically, physically. They were tortured during the slavery period. Okay?
I would say that ultimately.
They used to take boatloads of people from Africa all over the world, and you don't just say psychologically, my friend. Okay?
I'm not trying to downplay. I'm just saying.
No, but
I
you
believe-
did actually. You did downplay.
I-
And that's young Jacob, and Jacob will learn over time. Jacob's young, and he's growing as a nationalist, and he's a lovely, very smart boy, and I consider him a nice friend. He'll learn because once you give these people an inch, they will never be satisfied. Once you apologize for one thing, they'll make you apologize for something more. Then you apologize a little bit more, and they'll ask you to apologize more. Never complain, never explain, never apologize for the empire. When they say, "Oh, was the empire bad?" you say, "No, it was glorious." What do you mean it was glorious? They did all these horrible things. You say, "Yeah, it was imperial. It was regal." Never. And it's a reason you, as a product of empire, and me with this narrative exists right now over here. Never cock on the topic, because he just wants you to apologize. He wants to play to his Muslim audience where he's beating up the young white guy half his age, right? Never let him do that. Just say no. Straight direct response. Oh, if it wasn't for imperialism and colonization, you would be sitting somewhere in a village somewhere, and you'd never be in a royal park. So you should be grateful. That's what you should be grateful that you're here. Grateful that you actually managed to stand here talking to this Englishman in England, because this is his home. It's like home.
Tried to whitewash it.
I didn't try to whitewash it. That's
Slavery was bad.
whitewash. Right, no.
This would be a great time for you to, of course, talk about Islamic slavery. Isn't that going on right now today? Isn't Islamic slavery prevalent all over the Middle East, North Africa? I'm not an expert. Now we've got Nada and people in the chat. And obviously people like Takia Watch, probably got much more data than me. But even my cursory understanding of the topic tells me slavery is alive and well today. In fact, you're smiling over here, but this guy's religion likes to keep you guys as slaves. That's what's happening today. Whereas this man's culture liberated slavery. Whereas this man's culture perpetuates slavery. So this side-by-side comparison of slavery, again, Jacob is impeccably well, and I won't fault him, but well-mannered young man. But, you did pick on him when no one else was there, didn't you? We know your type. I'm going to have a chat with you later.
I'm saying ultimately when you torture someone, you beat them. Why is that bad? It's because it's as ultimately. I guess you could distinguish between.
All I'm saying is that what's wrong with working together? That's all I'm saying.
What's wrong with working together with everyone in their own lands? What's wrong with trading between people? What's wrong with working together?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Trading with people,
So why can't
working
we?
together.
So why can't we
I'm
do it
saying
in our own countries?
why not work together in the same geographic location?
Because if we
now
carry
that we have
Why? But what if he doesn't want to? What if he doesn't like the sound of you, the look of you, the likes of you? What if he doesn't want to smell the same thing you smell, listen to the same songs you listen to? What makes him have to share his home with you? After all, let me ask you this way. How many of your daughters, Hashim, do you want to sexually share with other men? Do you want your young daughters to be sexually shared by other people? Is the answer no? So when you want to protect what's precious to you, I assume your daughters are precious. You don't want them to be sexually shared. Why should this man share what's precious to him, his nation and his legacy? Why should he share it with you? What's the rationale? Because what's precious to you, you don't want to share, but you want him to share what's precious to him. Again, my considered response to be off is the general direction in which I believe you should fuck.
Because now that globalization has gone global,
yeah,
why not?
Because, okay, why? Because if we carry on working together at the same rate that we currently are, then soon enough there's going to be no more English people who will be able to work to offer what they. Yeah, I agree with you.
Good point.
Absolutely.
The Greeks has got a good point.
By the way, I don't have anything against any foreign person. I blame my own government completely.
No.
It's not a prejudice.
No. Why?
Oh, no, for birth rate.
So you're saying English people who decide to have only maybe 2 children or 1 child, do you think that's the government's fault? How?
That's okay. No, I should say not the current government's fault. I should say
even the past government. How is that fault?
I would say.
Did somebody force them to do that?
Not forced, but I would say, for example, the introduction of no fault.
Notice the high ethnic in-group coefficient. Notice how the 4 or 5 mics. Notice the sound guy behind over here is texting audio quality. Notice how they're acting as a collective. They're acting as a collective against a young, brave lad standing by himself to argue for his right. And you have the audacity to tell him what his problems and faults are. This is, again, the problem with liberals on the left. They make these people think they're equal. The liberal sitting over here goes, hey, look, they're all equal. The Muslim who's far right doesn't believe for a second he's equal. He is practicing full-on imperial taqiyya. He doesn't believe a word that's coming out of his mouth. He doesn't want the same equality. He doesn't want to share his daughters around and his wife sexually. He wants to maintain what's his for himself. He wants to do it in your land, but he doesn't want you to want the same thing for yours that excludes him. This is why integration never works. Integration is a ridiculous idea. This man can never be integrated. He is always going to be a hostile outgroup to the English. The only solution for peace is for him to return to his home.
Divorce in the 1960s. Sorry, no fault divorce. No fault divorce. Yeah, because people, when you're married, and especially when you're religious,
is that a thing? You can divorce someone for no.
No, you idiot, Hashim. It is a famous piece of legislation introduced in the birth of the 60s and the modern revolution out of California that allowed a woman to not have to have a reason dependent on a man. And you could trace that as a single legislative act that led to the start of the corrosion of the nuclear family. Christianity and everything followed after that attack. No-fault divorce, Jacob is right, is one of the first core pieces of legislation that attacked the nuclear family. You don't know what that is because you don't have that problem because your in-group maintains their high ethnic coefficiency, and there's no such thing as equal no-fault divorce in Islam. Islamic women can't just walk away, right? But notice how you're disingenuous again, right? You pretend you don't know what that is. Or if you don't know what that is, then you're not qualified for this debate, while your sidekick, of course, is dealing with you in a highly collectivized unit, right?
It's more of a legal term. It's just one example. I'm saying.
Jacob is right. It is a legal term. It's a precise legal term. It was a legal term introduced in the late 50s and 60s in the United States.
No, but I'm asking, is that a literal thing? Or?
Essentially it makes divorce a much easier thing to.
Yeah, but you cannot just go to the court of law and say I want a divorce and I give no reason. I think they have to give a reason, right? At least a reasonable reason.
It's more okay.
Now, again, notice the disingenuous smirk. He knows exactly what that is. He knows what talaq is in Islam. He knows exactly what that means. You can tell by his face. He doesn't even believe what he's saying, which is why, again, you can't trust the outgroup because his only interest is his own in-group while he's in the diaspora. The young nationalists notice the black kid is looking at him. It's pretty much all against Jacob, right? It's all of you against him. And you're going smirking. Look at the little smirk on the face. You see that muscle when that follows over here and that one rises? These 11 muscles, that's a smirk pattern, right? That smirk pattern, because he knows exactly what that is, because inside he knows very well your liberal corruption has lost your Christian spirit, and with it you're losing your civilization, and we're here to take over. That's exactly what he's doing. Jacob is arguing in good faith. This man is not arguing in good faith.
That's like an extreme version of it, but it's much easier than it was before. Let's say, okay. So
fair
like
enough.
measures like that, which are basically also the kind of, I would say, the kind of attack on Christianity culturally. You know, it's as people have tried to make
Christianity doesn't let you divorce at all, unless you committed adultery.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm saying.
Do you agree with that?
It depends how you interpret Christianity. I'm not here to have a theological.
No, but you believe in the Bible, right?
Sort of.
So you're not a Christian.
Well,
yes,
you can call me what you want. I don't care. You know?
The way you come here and you mock Christians in their modern forms when they're down on their knees because Christianity has taken a blow for a few centuries, let me mock you back. If you believe that Quran is the divine transmission of Allah and incorruptible, and I point out the fact that only 400 million people in the world speak Arabic, therefore all 3/4 of Muslims, by the act of reading and interpreting the Quran in a foreign language, are kuffars. 3/4 of the world's indigenous Muslims populations are kuffars. Either you give up perfect transmission of the Quran, or you give up 3/4 of the Muslims. Do you read Arabic perfectly, Hashim? Does every Muslim in the park read Arabic? I know they don't. Would you like me to start straw polling them? Because by the same reasoning, your 3/4 of all Muslims are not Muslims. They can't be, because the word of Allah is incorruptible by transmission, correct? But that's your claim, right? If your claim is it's not been corrupted by transmission, therefore any active interpretive structure by any language would require translation in the mind of the reader, and therefore there cannot be Muslims. Which is it, Hashim?
I don't want to call you anything. I want you to define yourself.
I'm just somebody who believes.
Are you a Christian, sir?
I'm someone who believes that there is a high being that we call God, and I believe that the Christian conception of that is one of the most reasonable ways to interpret that. And I like the fact that my culture is historically Christian, but I also recognize the contributions that pagan culture has given us as well. And I have the deep respect for people who have a conception of.
No, it's not about defining other people. I'm asking how you define yourself.
I define myself as a weird sort of fusion, a weird sort of fusion, a blend of kind of Christianity and paganism. Right. That's the short answer. Okay.
Look at the way you mock, you laugh, the way he describes that. If we went to Karachi in Pakistan or Islamabad, wherever you're from, or are you Bangladeshi? Because you don't have the stature for the Muslim Bala. You're Bangladeshi, Hashim. If you went to Dhaka or Sylhet and you mocked Allah and the Quran the same way, you'd get slaughtered in blood. It is only the liberal white left that allow you guys in here to mock this man's traditions and faith, to mock its pagan roots to Christianity, to mock him in his homeland. But you don't give that same liberal equality you claim you want to hide under this umbrella of liberalism, this umbrella the left has given you. It is, and mark my words, a temporary umbrella that you hide under. You won't get the same umbrella to anyone in your lands, to your people. Good Lord, you won't even share sexually your daughters and your women with anyone else. Yet you stand here with the balls to mock him. Why? Because Jacob was alone that day, wasn't he? This is the true nature of the beast. There is no integration. Let's just beat this in 2020 and 2021 out of the society's mimetic structure. There is no integration project. It is an abject failure. You cannot integrate. You do not belong here, and you cannot integrate. Your every word and action, your revealed preferences, if you're an Austrian economist fan, every theory of revealed preferences shows in-group preference on all three axes operating against the native. You're a hostile outgroup member. You need to go home.
Many of us, struggle with religious issues.
If you're not sure about
we can't all be
rooted
in ourselves like you Muslims.
No. There are many Muslims who might be confused.
I noticed you wouldn't take this tone with Bob the Builder or Brother Cain in the park, would you? Would you do the same tone with Hatum, with Daniel, with Brother Bob, with Cain? No, you'd be running and fleeing, running around in circles. But you take a young man half your age and you're trying to bully him because you're spiritually confident, where he's spiritually nascent. His spirituality is rising in him, whereas yours is established as a man of twice his age. Is this the deen of Allah? Or is the true deen that you look at him with the filth that he's a kuffar? Which is it? We know the truth, right? You look at him as an imperial member of an outgroup. Well, we nationalists are coming, and ultimately, in my perfect dream world, Your entire internet history and every audit record of every chimp on this island will be taken into account in the criteria for repatriation. You've just failed to secure your existence here. It's not if, it's when, Hashim. Time to go home.
But most of them at least know the basics. Like, for example,
And I'd like to see you try to bully Jacob when I'm there next time.
if you do not
I know
one
the
God
basics.
and you submit to one God, or you basically commit shirk, you associate others with God.
Yeah.
This basic they know.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I know the basics.
so when I
of
ask someone,
fundamental
"Are you a
Christianity."
Muslim?" and they say yes, and then I say, "Hold on, but you also believe in Jesus to be God," then I don't consider
course.
you, but based on the rule of the Quran, that you are a Muslim because you just contradicted the Quran.
Sure, but
But I'm sure the Christians will judge you the same way.
they will, absolutely will. I'm sure.
That's the reason I asked you what
I'm
you
sure
think.
I'm a complete heretic, going to hell in the eyes of the Catholic Church.
No, you're not, Jacob. You're a nascent, ascending, rising Christian. Not at all. It's a long journey and it takes time. And you'll see different strands. You'll be tempted by paganism, all sorts of things. And you will take your spiritual growth with you because you're a very young man. He, on the other hand, is using his age and maturity and spiritual confidence to bully you and to act in a hostile fashion towards you. And the beauty of it is that you have stood pure and true. You've been open and honest and kind. He has not. Again, can you see, if you guys should look up how to read body facial expressions. I spent a lot of time in the States, so the mate of mine is very good at that. You can see again, you see this tightening of the eye position? See that look of hostility, the pursing of the lip? The man is disingenuous. He is playing for his Muslim audience, multiple cameras, multiple recorders, feeding in how we got a white guy, send it to Saudi Arabia, send it to the Gulf states, get more money for your dawah. Dawah do, dawah da. Dawah do, dawah da. Right?
That's okay. I'm not, and
Well, the
I'm
Catholics are under the cattle of fish, but so yeah, I mean, look, when you talk about cultural diversity, I see there is a lot of benefit.
Okay.
We can benefit from each other, and this has happened throughout.
Cultural diversity.
And we can just see the actual benefits of the diversity right now. You're mocking the man, you're bullying the man, you're intimidating the man, you're mocking his history, you're mocking his culture, you're mocking his ethnicity. You run away from anything he wants to consider sacred. Yeah, sure. You can just see the sheer fucking enjoyment, the enrichment you bring to this man's life, right? He came there for good in faith argument with you. You know exactly who he is. You know he's part of our little collectives, and you jumped in, you picked him up so you could feed him to your own, right? This is bread and circuses for your Muslim audience, right? You can see the enrichment. You can see what you offer him. You offer him a reason to double down and remove you.
Yeah, we have seen this everywhere around the world today. Yeah, so you go to any country, I think most of them today, the reason they have come to accepting cultural diversity as opposed to having just ethnicity.
Okay.
Yes.
No, most cultures that aren't most non-European countries are actually not reaping the benefits of multicultural right now. Why? Because they.
Oh, Hashim. Will you practice what you preach? So, for example, how many black non-Muslim boyfriends will you allow to enrich your daughter? Do you believe in cultural diversity, right? Culture, religion is about culture, race is about culture, right? Sexual freedom is about culture. How much cultural diversity does Hashim want for his daughters? Does he want her to have a wide range of sexual partners of varying races and varying faiths? Does he want that same liberal equality he hides under the skirts of the left? How many sexual partners? Do you think your wife should have lots of sexual partners as well? How about your daughters? Is that how you... No. You are ultra-clerical fascist when it applies to your own, but you want the other to take what you know would ruin Islam, right? It would ruin everything you stand for. So is there any other tribe that believes in diversity for thee, but not for me? Can we think of any other group that practices diversity for thee and not for me? Hashim is practicing diversity for thee, but not for me.
Prefer to have their own country for their own people.
I'll give you one country. Okay, Singapore.
Sure, you can. I'm not saying everyone.
Giggling because what? You use a tiny population city-state that maintains authoritarian force to ensure its diversity, right? You understand Singapore is one of the most draconian authoritative structures. If you drop your chewing gum in Singapore, you get fined. The only way it ensures its cultural diversity was a bit like Yugoslavia under Tito, under authoritarian regime. And you giggle like a little schoolgirl. Why do you giggle like a schoolgirl? Because you know your argument is absurd and Singapore is a ridiculous example.
I think they benefited a lot. This is a country, small
see,
country.
this is a.
And so you don't say there's no
This is not a small country, it's the greatest country in the world.
country. There are many examples I can give you.
I'm sure
but
you.
cannot,
I'm sure you could give a dozen now. I'm
Okay.
saying.
So you give me a country which is benefited just by excluding anyone except their own ethnicity. Go.
Iceland,
I've given you one. You give me one.
Well,
India,
it's not quite like this, but
Why not?
China,
You should be able to give me at least
no,
one.
no, no,
example.
Vietnam,
I will, but sort of Israel, like.
What? Israel has cultural diversity.
Yeah,
What do you
they
mean?
cultural diversity.
No, but they do.
Yeah.
Look, the Jews, they might be a race,
Yeah.
but they come from Russia, they come from all different places in the world. So don't say it's just the Jews in Israel.
No, but they are.
In fact, the
no.
Jews in Israel are probably a minority.
Okay.
The original.
To say,
ethnic-
I disagree. I disagree with you saying that some Jews are Russian. That's
not some,
really.
no.
No, I
They come
don't
from
really.
Ukraine, from Russia.
No, I think no. I think
Yes.
I think if you're Jewish, you are really Israeli. You might have family that have been settled in Russia or Britain.
Okay,
America
let's
or Germany.
define the country. I think we're wasting.
There's different
So
kinds.
there are atheists.
Yeah,
there are atheist Jews as well.
Yeah, there's
Yes, you know that. Now wait a minute. What do you mean by they have benefited?
So who benefits?
Listen,
Israel.
because you feel that
How has Israel benefited from
it's in a state of war.
from being?
How is it benefited?
Okay, it's in a state of war because it's still a very young country. People are still pissed off with the way that they got hold of that country. But I'm saying they have.
When did Israel? When was it formed? Yes.
And there's
Is
still.
Pakistan in a state of war?
It's not a state of war, but it's hardly a harmonious little paradise right
Well,
now.
any country, I mean, how many is like subjective now? Okay? Yes, yeah, there's tension. I'm not saying there's no tension. There's
Yeah.
tension between here and Ireland for some time. Does it make it
Not-
like in a
not-
state
not
of
on
war?
the- not on the
No, it's
same
not.
scale, but
I don't think it's comparable.
yeah.
Really? Like,
I would say
want
not
the
as
IRA coming here and
Kashmir is
causing a lot of terrorism.
Yes.
I don't think there was any tension. Seriously.
No, no one's saying it, but there's no
Well,
tension.
have you been? Well, maybe you should visit it sometime. Okay. Anyway, I'm not saying. I'm saying there are many countries out there which are what you say, young countries, and they are actually quite well off in terms not only in terms of monetary or financially. I mean in terms of diversity, in terms of as countries, quite a few. Look up countries which have formed after that.
That's fine. Okay, let me.
Anyway, it's not a bad example. Any other country?
No, wait, hang on. Let me turn to the example of a culture, an old country which is, multicultural. The United States, right? Okay, that's I guess a young country on sort of global standards, right? But yeah. So you could say, oh, look at America. They're like, land of anyone.
50 years old. How old is it?
76 was when it's founded, right? So
Something, yeah.
yeah.
Not that old.
So you could say, oh.
You don't know the date 1776, or are you lying? Are you absurd? What's your command of history? Let's get this right. We have a Herr Elrondeur in the chat. There were no nation states prior to the 30-Year War. There were no nation states, right? And most of the modern nation states were constructed at the end of colonization, which covered most of the planet of the Earth. Over 150 of the modern countries by the United Nations are de facto ethno-states. They don't practice diversity, they practice native hegemony. They might have small minority populations in Vietnam, but the Vietnamese are hegemonistic. Same in Pakistan, you have tribes coming in from the northern regions of Afghanistan, but Pakistan is hegemonistic. They're hegemonistic native states. What are you talking about? Are you an idiot? The only countries where this is allowed to happen is Western liberal democracies. For now, you have muddled through a bunch of stupid examples, diversity for thee, but not for me, and you're telling an Englishman in England with a Ukrainian and a black eye, and you telling him to practice diversity, but the same diversity of preference you don't want to show for Islam. Where's the diversity there? Where is that? No, it's a structure that is intact, imperial, no reformation since 632, right? You are a disingenuous, deceitful man. You must leave. It is our intended, explicit political objective to remove you.
Oh, look at America. America has people coming, from all over the world, right? It's, got people, you can go.
Imagine a thought experiment for a moment. Imagine a perfect different world, an alternative universe, if you like, in Minecraft, where the three people standing here are actually English, and they're speaking to Jacob as an Englishman. The cultural cost of this gobbledygook would be removed. The integration cost, which is a negative ethnic coefficient cost on the native English, because this is England, would be removed. And the four English people would not have to constantly fight this battle. Instead, they would be disagreeing and cooperating to produce superior English culture, evolving English culture upwards towards the stars. Your presence removes, detracts, and subtracts from English growth. You have to go.
Go there, land of the free. Well, okay, so here's the interesting thing. Let me say this, right? So, are they doing amazingly right now? Are they? I mean, they're a global superpower.
Exactly.
Right? Yes, but if you look actually at the net budget effects of people who are not the original, sort of European settlers, it actually, how, like, they'd be hundreds of billions of dollars richer if they basically didn't have a bunch of migrant leeches or children of migrant
hold on. Those Europeans were migrant leeches.
So we're playing this game. Okay, we're playing this game. Lovely.
The black man, standing wearing Western clothes manufactured in the West, chooses that moment to clap at the remark, white men are leeches. White men are leeches is a bit rich, coming from a man living in England, leeching off the English culture, leeching off the English legacy, leeching what was bequeathed to this man, while your sidekick claps when you make a racist remark against whites. Once more, meta point. Integration is a myth. There is no integrated chimp. There is just a hostile outgroup. Example number 2, racism against white, leeching in the homeland of the English, other outgroup clapping, and even the nice libertarian, Pavlov, who doesn't get involved in any collective conversation. He also smiles, kind of rather dozily, right? Anglophobia is real. Anglophobia is rife, and we must stand up to Anglophobia, stand up to racism. I intend to stand up to racism like William Wilberforce, who did it for the black man. We must stand up to racism against the white man in his homeland, right? It's a moral crime.
Who does America belong to? Before the...
If I go by the 1791 formative text, free white men of good character, everything after that was a corruption of the American ethos. Free white men of good character is who the United States belongs to, and it will one day, God willing, be restored to free white men of good character.
Europeans came there as colonialists.
Okay, I'm very glad you say this.
Who did it belong to?
Let me.
And where are they today?
I want to hear this.
You remember the example I gave you that wherever they go, they don't benefit the local people. Because the Native Americans have actually literally been wiped out. Yes, the same thing happened in Australia. Same thing happened in Australia.
No, they haven't. I've seen Native Americans and I've seen Aboriginal people.
They became the minority.
You just said they've been literally wiped out. They became
the minority in their own country.
Okay, no, you said literally wiped out, implying that.
So what you're suggesting shouldn't happen to your country, you actually did to other countries.
Okay, no, there is.
And you see the smile and the laugh, right? Like that old limerick from the Irish that ends with the smile was in the face of the tiger. You see this? And you know what this is? The third slip you make. Any attempt to integrate and any attempt to resist integration is met by what I call the counter post-slavery revenge narrative. This is the post-colonial revenge narrative. Because your ancestor did something in the past that I want to say is wrong, I'm going to do it to you today and say it's good. The moral contradictions are just rife for those who can think on their feet and quick. You say what was done in the past to my people bad, therefore I'm going to do it to you today and it is good. But you, of course, would know that two wrongs don't make a right, or you enter a moral inconsistency argument. But look at the smile on your face. Look at the glee in your face. Do you love the English? Do you love this man in this land that you stand? Do you actually care about him, his future, what he wants? No, you don't. You don't like him. You don't love him. You don't care about him. You care about punishing him. Your interactions are punitive. You and your 5 mics are playing to an Islamic audience going, look, give us more money so we can punish white people in their homeland. Punitive revenge meta-narrative. Interesting how you don't make eye contact with me when I pass you in the park. Curious about that.
So,
When I say you, I mean Europeans.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, right. There is a difference between arriving in a piece of land where people have not established.
I like the way you said arriving.
Hang on. Right, settling, colonizing.
How did you get here? I mean, when you laugh in your little hysterical, childlike, effeminate giggle, how did you arrive? Right? And Hall, you're right. This man always cocks to his race and his ethnicity, but then he ran away from, Ukraine, blah, blah. But notice how this one is smiling. So what can you see here? You can see the cock libertarian. You can see the two collectives, highly racinated black anti-white collective. Look at the face. Look at the glee. Look at the smile. Right? Look at this. This is it in action. This is what it's like. So when they say the great replacement and when it's occurring, and they say, oh, it's not occurring, one common argument is the argument of ordinality, because it's not happened everywhere, it hasn't happened anywhere. But when you look at Speaker's Corner with myself, Jamie, James, all the other lads go, and you look at what happens when you see it in front of you, this is what it looks like when you have been replaced. This is how they're treating you gently, because the law prevents them treating you how they really want to treat you. You know what he really wants to do to you. He's told you what he wants to do to you. They want to punish you in your homeland. Wake up. Wake up now. It's time to reclaim England, right?
Just came
Fine,
peacefully on a boat.
Okay, most of them
with Rose.
Was it peaceful in Rotherham, peaceful in Telford, peaceful in Manchester in the arena? Was 9/11 peaceful? Did you come in peace? Did Shamima Begum come in peace? Did Usman Khan come in peace in London Bridge? Was every girl screaming while she was being raped by multiple of you men together? Was that peaceful? You came in peace, right? The religion of peace, right?
Actually, most interactions. Hang on, most interactions were peaceful, actually, but fine. Okay, right, fine. Call it colonizing. Call it violently. I don't know, whatever. War.
What the natives are killed?
Of course,
in big numbers.
Of course,
in millions.
In big
No,
numbers.
not diseases.
No.
They brought the diseases.
In big numbers.
They brought the diseases as well.
In big numbers, but not as big numbers as everyone likes to say. Okay.
No, I'm not saying
because people say, oh, it was a Native American genocide. Why then did the population only decline by 0.22% each year? Okay, that doesn't sound like a genocide to me.
Wait. You're saying that these people, they came up peacefully. They grabbed the land.
No, I didn't say that. I said many. I'm not sure about my side. I don't have the data to say that. I'm saying many interactions were peaceful. Now there were individual examples.
Many
of
interactions,
genocide,
but most were not peaceful.
I'm not sure if you can say most.
Well, I would say most.
I have to check that.
The fact that Native
can
Americans
say that,
are a minority in their own continent. I would say continent, because both North America and South America, both of them, they did not have a white European race existing before they were colonized.
In that case, Hashim, you're Indian, and you should immediately reject Islam, because Islam was a colonizing force into India. If I gave you a genetic test, you probably have less than 5 to 10% admixture that is not of the Indian haplogroup. So because you are a product of colonization by an Arab religion, are you going to use the same argumentation and throw off your shackles and return to Hinduism? Or are you going to be a willing subject of the Islamic conquest of India? Which is it? You can't argue and ask young Jacob to roll over and play dead and have his culture, his heritage and legacy removed, whereas you yourself, of course, are rolling over. If you speak to extreme Hindu nationalists, which I know far too many for my own health, and I mean really right-wing Indian nationalists. I mean, nationalists is the wrong word. They're clerical fascists, or even worse. They believe that you have a genetic weakness that allowed Islam to take you out. They have a solution that requires, let's say, redressing that genetic balance. For lack of, I'm trying to be euphemistic here, right? They believe that only the weak were conquered by Islam, and the true Hindutva will return to its spiritual glory when that genetic mistake is corrected for. Yet here you are in England, where you arrived, and after arriving in England, you are actually doing the very same thing you're holding him to account for, while doing it in real time, supported by a bunch of dozy-looking people who are also clearly English, right? The hypocrisy is just sickening. Again, meta point, integration is a myth. There is no integration. They are just future deportees.
Do you agree with that?
Ish. So,
What do you mean if it's
right? So you're saying
So
okay,
you're
so
saying
they're
they
wiped
existed
out.
before? No, I'm not talking about wipe out it. I'm just asking, in terms of population,
Yes.
were the white Europeans there before they colonized those countries?
Well, actually, the salutarian hypothesis says that they might have been.
But I don't want might be. I want.
Well, I don't care. That's what the hypothesis
No,
is.
don't give
Sorry.
me speculations. Give me facts.
Well, I can't. Some people have a hypothesis that they weren't. Some people have the hypothesis.
Well,
that
many
they
people have hypotheses that are lizards walking amongst us.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I know. So,
I'm going to believe
you're-
that.
you're- no,
Don't give me
no,
speculations.
you're,
Give me facts.
you're giving me speculation as well.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
You're saying maybe white people were never in America until they came
I
until the
said
late-
about the numbers.
I don't know.
In numbers, they were not really. Maybe I don't know. Maybe somebody settled before Columbus came there. I don't know. Maybe
Right.
maybe the Arabs went there because there are many Arabs who claim that they actually went to South America.
Okay,
and
but
to
that's
North
obviously
America
wrong.
as well.
That's
Well,
not-
you can't say obviously. That is their theory.
No, I can because if you look at the salutarian hypothesis and you look at the evidence that it has,
Hypothesis.
it says.
Again, hypothesis. Facts, bro.
See, I
We're
don't.
not talking about science
I think
theories here. We're talking about history.
I wonder. If
History cannot be just hypothesis.
Do you
When you have history,
Do you
give me facts.
understand?
Here's a hypothesis for you. There was no divine revelation in the cave. Give me facts, Hashim. I want facts. Give me facts in it, fam. Give me some facts. Was there any rocking? Was there any Gabriel? Was there any squeezing of the breath? Or are these just hypotheses? Give me facts in it, fam. This is just bullying and intimidating of a man half your age playing to the camera. I mean, I will return when the virus is safe and my family people think it's safe for me to venture to such places. But I will be resuming this debate at you. I will be asking you particularly perceptive questions when I see you next. But I've noticed on 3 occasions when our eyes have met, you have lowered your gaze appropriately as a dhimmi will do in England. Because when you look at me, I will not be so kind to you. You are a dhimmi in England. You're not a Christian, and you're not white, and you're not English, and this is not your home. And the fact that you can think you can pick on a young lad just because he's by himself, well, every dog has its day, right?
Do you understand that you can apply the scientific method to history?
You can, but speculation.
But you could.
Okay. And when there was the rocking in the cave, where's your facts, fam? Where are your facts about the squeezing? Where are the facts? Or is your entire faith built on a house of cards?
You could broaden the definition to speculation and say that you could say that the idea that the Earth
Why
is
you
round. is
why are you
speculation.
arguing about a point which is quite clear that before the
Notice you can see some of the creatures all surrounding their cameras over here, guys, that you can't see enough familiar speaker's corner. He's standing over here. The boy stood on the burning deck. One lone Englishman, Hail Jacob, good man, and just surrounded, holding his ground, because he knows he has to fight for England, because this can only get worse, right?
Europeans came there, before they
Yes,
came to North and
yes,
South America,
yes.
they were, even if I accept your hypothesis, they probably were a small fraction, a small minority.
I'm saying
in
I
those
don't know. I'm
continents.
saying I don't know.
Okay,
To be
anyway.
fair, in fairness, I didn't come here,
Yeah.
prepared
So,
for debate.
they were
yeah.
colonialists there.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
came
sure,
as colonialists,
sure,
and that's
sure,
fine.
sure.
And the local population was almost.
Lesson to any young nationalist: never argue against colonialism. Just embrace it, praise it, and say it's the best thing that ever happened. And when you run into creatures like that, say, yeah, but if it wasn't for colonization, you wouldn't be here. You'd be sitting in some village in Bengal somewhere, and I would be free of the integration costs that I have to suffer every time I deal with you, right? Don't waste time on this. There is no, because it's just a segue into the revenge narrative. Once you accept colonization bad, then they're going to say punitive measures from the past. Down comes reparations. Down comes you into cultural subjugation, moral subjugation. Go the other way. Just say, yeah. What's the benefits of colonization? Hey, you're here. Simple English. You're here. If it wasn't for colonization, you'd be sitting in some little village in Bengal somewhere, wouldn't you? Praying 5 times a day. You wouldn't have this little jacket. You wouldn't have all this technology. You wouldn't have an umbrella. You wouldn't have the beanie cap. You wouldn't have the groom. None of this. You'd be sitting in Bengal with a piece of cloth around you. The benefits of colonization for you, matey, is you're here. Simple as that. Never. But what about the past? Hey, in the past, if you weren't colonized, you'd be even a worse place off than you are. That's the only argumentation here. This is them hiding under this umbrella of liberalism. Once we get rid of this umbrella of liberalism, you've got nowhere to hide, matey. You have nowhere to hide. You're going to go peacefully, or you're going to kick up a little fuss as you leave. Believe you will.
White guys. Okay, I wouldn't say all of them, but almost white guys.
You're an ungrateful immigrant. The worst kind of immigrant is the ungrateful immigrant. That's what you are.
Yeah.
And the reason that
Largely
happened is
through
because of violence that they brought along,
Okay.
and the diseases they
Okay,
brought along with them.
mostly diseases, and also let's not, of course us.
Exactly.
Let's not forget the tribes killing each other as well. Okay,
No, look,
it's not like they were all living peacefully, and then,
I didn't say
then,
they all.
then
Did
the
I say
evil
that?
Europeans showed up.
That's a straw man argument. I did not say that.
No, I'm
Every
saying
every
that's not- you
country
didn't
have their
factor
own
in. It's not
internal
true, man. It's
problems.
not true, man.
But it doesn't mean you go and occupy that land and then wipe out the local population.
Okay.
Just because you can go and thrive in it. By the
Okay.
way, what is the point?
I
you
was
made?
yeah, I was saying, so there is a difference, right, between you got to say violently settling, okay?
Colonizing. Use the correct term. Colonizing.
I think the correct term is
Literally
arriving.
colonizing.
Arriving is not an incorrect term. They arrived. There's a difference between arriving in a
Colonizing.
geographic territory, okay, right, where states,
Hysterical, effeminate giggling notwithstanding, you've arrived, haven't you? I mean, how did you get here? If you don't think arrive, you said colonizing, imperial. Well, how do you describe your presence here? How did you get here? Birth chain migration? Faking some marriage documents or something? How did you get here? Did you just arrive? Or were you a colonizing imperial army for Islam? In either case, whatever adjective you use, the conversation is no. You don't belong here.
Why the euphemism? I don't know why.
It's not a euphemism.
It is arriving when they colonize them by force.
They arrive.
Notice how the black guy doubles down. He kind of doubles down in laughter because what is he enjoying? He's not participating in this. Look at his body language. He is laughing at what he perceives as white man being beaten up. That's all it is. Look at him. Look at the guy.
Did they not land in boats?
Look at him
Yes,
laughing.
they did, for a purpose. They went there with an army.
Look at the smiling teeth. Look at it. All right. See, there's proof. Right? Proof. There is no integration. The black guy and the brown guy, twice as collectivized, twice as racinated, laughs at the white man. The cock white guy who's deracinated doesn't care. After all, he's Ukrainian. Again, the thesis of ethnic bonding coefficients and race and ethnicity holds true. Race is weak. If this was a Ukrainian, he'd have jumped in. But because he's not, he doesn't jump in. The white collectivizing force is very weak. The ethnic coefficient is higher, but he's not the same ethnicity. These guys are just bonded by the fact that they hate whites. They're anti-white. Hence, the black guy's doubled over while he should be in Africa, right?
Army for a purpose.
Okay.
So imagine this: if a country, let's say Malta, tomorrow comes here with a shipload of soldiers,
Malta is a Christian country.
Yeah.
would you say they're arriving to England?
I would say, yeah. In a way, they are.
I hope the immigration officers agree with you.
I say that about when immigrants come here. I say foreigners are arriving in our land, okay, and
With
making
an
it
army.
unsustainable.
You did not hear what I said.
Yeah, it's kind of an invasion right now. But
Seriously, you're not serious about this.
I mean, do you know what's happening in Greece
If
right
they
now?
came with an army, it would be an invasion, literally.
Yeah.
It would.
Yeah.
So don't just say arriving. They invaded or they colonized.
Okay, but this is
That's
not,
a better term.
Okay, no, but this is not.
I have a better idea. Why don't you, as a non-native Englishman, don't tell the Englishman what language and words to use in English? That would be my response if I was Jacob. I mean, hey, you're not English, right? You're speaking my language in my land. I'll decide how I want to organically use the words that are native to me, and you can just fuck off, mate.
Not an invasion, though.
Which one?
The America. That's not an invasion.
So they didn't come with boatloads of soldiers.
It's not an invasion.
Did they come with soldiers or not?
They can't get.
No, they didn't. They first came as pilgrims, you idiot.
Yes, they would have had
For what?
personnel with them.
To have a tea party in America?
Not for an invasion.
For what?
I know what you're trying to do.
Well, I know for what they came, and everybody
Yeah,
knows.
yes, to colonize
This is
them.
axiomatic.
I'm saying
In the
you need to
the
draw
history
a
of
dichotomy
colonialism.
between colonization and an invasion. Anyway, my point, if I could make it before we
Please
get
do, yeah.
caught up on English semantics. So there is a difference, and I'm going to just use his words so that we can settle this again.
Colonization.
Like, and think of this just so that you can not accuse me of downplaying.
Is it just me, because I've been a little poorly the last few days, is it just me that wants to wipe that sick smiley look off his face using Minecraft techniques? Is it just me? I'm sure Har would agree with me. I'm sure Elron would. I'm not sure Sonia would. God bless you, Sonia, my sister in Christ. But the sickness, look at the man, look at the eyes. This is just punishment. This is not a discussion in good faith. There's nothing sincere about this. This is an attempt at punitive conversation, right? For him to play to his audience. But you know one thing you can't change, Hashim, that you can never change? He's an Englishman in England, and you can never take that away from him. You cannot remove the fact that he's English and you're not, and this is England and it's not your homeland. The rest is just a matter of when and how. And we are coming, and you can't stop us.
Think of the most violent word. Like, there's a difference between colonizing or invading or massacring or whatever, between coming onto and colonizing, land, a geographical territory, right? Where it's not really an army, but fine. Okay, where a formal nation state has not been established. Okay, there's a difference between that and arriving again. I'm not that.
Oh, what do you mean formal nation state?
Okay, we can discuss
Are
nation
you
state.
saying it wasn't the United States of America at that time?
No.
Then what do you mean formal nation
I'm
state?
saying these people
who were there, they had a sovereign land.
No, they didn't.
No, you didn't, you absolute buffoon. At least if you're going to try to attack European history, understand the history of political theory in Europe. Until the Germans and the 30-Year War, there was no principle of nationhood. It took 40% and 8 million German dead before the Germans fought each other and the Holy Roman Empire to come up with the idea of self-determination for an ethnic group in a place. This was a gift to you, Hashim, from the European people. No one else had it prior to that. That's why it's one of the most significant events in world history. So no, in 1648, there was no nation state in the United States. It was tribal and feudal. There was no concept in political theory of a nation state, that they had tribes. That's what it was. And they met a superior organizing principle called nations under king and empire, and they got their asses handed to them. And there's no shame for the Europeans to say, they took the entire continent of the United States, and then they built the nation called the United States of America. It belongs to them, doesn't belong to anybody else. Free white men of good character, if I correctly understand the 1791 documents.
They might not have labeled it as you wished, but
it's not to do with what I wish. They didn't have sovereignty.
Their territories
they weren't sedentary. They moved around. They didn't have the concept of this is our country. We're going to.
No country, Jacob, strictly. No notion of self-determination in a land linked to ethnicity. The three principles of the document signed in Paderborn and the document signed in Münster was the principle of self-determination in a land for an ethnicity. All three components interplaying. It was such a powerful concept that the treaty had to be signed simultaneously in Münster and in Paderborn. Because it was so significant, they were scared about the time delay between signing it in Münster and in Paderborn. And that gave birth to everything they're talking about. But this man probably knows that, but he doesn't give a shit. He needs to go home.
These are our borders. We're going to protect them. They didn't think like that. They're natives because they existed.
No, they didn't think like that because it took a massive war for the German people to think it through. The Germans, don't take this personally, I want to produce some of the finest thinkers on the planet. And it took a lot of thinking before the Germans got to the bottom of the core concept. Nation, self-determination for an ethnic group in a land. That was the 30-Year War. And the liberals have given it away to these people. This guy, not of the ethnic group. This guy, not of the ethnic group. This guy, not. Well, this guy's something, you don't know what he looks like. But they're not of the ethnic group. And they're telling this guy he should give up self-determination in his land. And my considered intellectual response is fuck yeah. Well, that was me back on the reviews because I can't stream for another week or so, and that was young Jacob. I think Jacob did pretty well. I'll pop the link in if anyone wants a little chitty chats. But I think I got a bunch of work calls. I'm avoiding work this week. I think Jacob did really well. So I think Jacob was, I don't think he was expecting to be ganged up on, but they obviously come for him. We love Minecraft, don't we, Hall? We do indeed. Um, yes, indeed, Nada. But can you see this kind of? Is it just me who sees at the racial deep level this absolute hatred and this need to punish the white guy for some reason, and then all these fallacious argumentations, the reasoning, the disingenuous. The yeah, I did grief. I got a strike because I made a video about white rights against Vice magazine, and hey, don't mention white rights because I'll be put on the naughty step, but that's all right. It'll be over in a week or so. But yeah, and just watching this, I thought Jacob did terribly well. I think he held himself well. He tried under pressure, obviously. Don't think he made any major errors in the argumentation. But if you look at the meta-narrative points, you can see clearly these people have no interest in caring about the native people. They're not like them. They don't act like them. They don't care about them. They don't feel the same way. Nothing about that, right? There's just no joy, man, no love there. So if anyone ever says to you, the liberals come up to you, and say, oh, well, integration will happen and they stick around for enough generations, they'll be like that. Nah, they never will. It'll just get worse and worse and worse, right? They'll just make it, the more numbers they gain, the more cultural confidence they gain, and the more nasty they become, right? Because what I saw wasn't particularly pleasant. I thought it was quite, just quite nasty, really. Just really uncomfortable to watch. But on the other hand, hey, we know the nature of the beast. We know the enemy. We know what's happening. What's happening in the chat and the gossip? 14 Squadron, badge of honor, mate. Yeah, indeed. Yes, I did get a strike because obviously, can't be talking about damn white rights and stuff. If I talk about damn white rights and Vice magazine being anti-white, whoa, they didn't like that. They filed a hate speech. Being pro-white will get you a hate strike. Whatever you have to do, you have to be in a bit semi-euphemisms for lots of things. You have to realize the way the gulag works. So, but unless anyone wants to jump in, I'm going to be. Oh, someone say, guten Tag, meine Bruder Wolf.
Hey, I have a half an hour time before my father comes, and I have to set up another fence, for my brother's home.
They're making you work.
Yeah.
Work sets you free, man.
Yeah, that's right. I first thought I had a sunburn, but it must have been the cement or some other chemicals in this fence, like I don't know, and we use some cement and other materials to build it. It must have been this, but it could be a sunburn because the sun was shining, and I basically go into the eremit mode. So basically, since Corona, Chen, I'm just sitting at home and only going outside like 2 hours a week or something.
Yeah. I mean, Germans are cautious people and sensible, right? Even in Simona's home village, which is a very small village, very beautiful village, and people are not even speaking to each other. They don't even speak to any foreigners there. There's almost no foreigners in the village. Like, and when I mean foreigners, I mean like anyone who are not Siegerlanders, yeah? Not even
it's a great benefit. I think the Swedes are even more hardcore on that. They are always just going inside and don't speak to anyone unless they drink a lot of beer, right? It's perfect for them. It's no problem at all for them to isolate themselves from the rest of the world. Yeah.
But you know where she lives in a village, I don't even know the name, but there's another, think of a Nieder village and an Uber village. Even the people in the Nieder village, they're very suspicious of the people in the Uber village.
Yeah.
They're not even like, hey, if you're from the Uber village, and I won't name it, they're immediately like, hey, who are these guys? So any potential corona carriers, the Germans immediately like, get the fuck away from me anyway. So I'm hoping her village is going to be, her village will be fine. So, but you never know, man.
We will see in the future.
Yeah.
But great review, I have to say. You brought up many points I would make. It was great, even though he was not dominating the discussion. I mean, this young lad there, he
Jacob
was
as well.
very polite, well
Yeah.
dressed,
Good optics.
and the other guy was just attacking him. And even though he seems dominant in the discussion, he didn't lose just based on optics, right? Because he had this sneaky smile all the time. People will realize something like this.
He's playing to his
And
Muslim audience. Remember, he had 5 mics on, there's 6 cameras.
yeah,
He's saying, hey, let me take the white kid as a sacrificial lamb. But when our eyes have met his speaker's corner, like a good dimmy, he's lowered his gaze and walked by me. So he's never come near me or Jamie or James or any of us, right? But they normally like to pick one off if there's no one around, right? So as you
yeah.
can see the way they think, right? It's pretty much in group against the out group, right? The way they and we should use the meta points to tell everyone else, look, never waste your time, right, with the equality argument. The
And
ground
isn't it funny that
you're not
that
English, you're not equal.
all these right wing people, I mean far right people, racist people, dominant, hating feminist people, are using the arguments and the whole concept of these feminists, of these cultural Marxists, right? They're all using it. It's the same narratives they use, even though they hate these people. They hate these cultural Marxists, right? They are all using their tactics.
They are, beg your pardon, they are hiding in clear sight under the skirts of the left because
Yeah,
they don't believe in liberal equality at all. They believe in in-group protection, in-group, in-group rules for them, be it Islam or be it their racial group. You see the black guy just laughing at Jacob, right?
exactly.
They don't believe that stuff, but they're going to use that in their argumentation. And then the white guys go in good faith, going, "Hey, yeah, okay, I'll play along to the liberal rules." And part of the process of coming out as a nationalist and moving up that intellectual stack is you take the foundational principle and you throw it out. You just throw it right out. Say, "No, I'm not equal to you. I'm an Englishman, and this is England. You are therefore never going to be equal to me." So any attempts at argumentation on equality, you just reject them. Say, "I'm a German. This is Deutschland. You're not German. I don't care what you think. Your view is not equal to my view because you're not German. I don't care how good your argumentation is. I reject it because it's a liberal idea, and then they use that liberal idea to attack you." But
Yeah.
did you mention Hashim was not being? He was not arguing in good faith, was he?
No, no. It's always dishonest. He was interrupting our Gen Z guy, um, and also he was asking all these questions, but never ever answered a question himself. And he should definitely point that out to the audience because when you don't keep a close eye on the conversation, you will forget this that he has done that. And he should point that out more often in the future, right?
Yeah.
Even go into this fight with specific questions you write on a paper before and try to remind it with a perfect framing and attack him with these questions until he answers this question, right?
Well, they tend to run, a lot of them will run like that, and they're very careful and selective because they're playing to the audience that is a Muslim audience that will give them donations and that will say, look how much inroads we've made. Imagine the conversations they have that we can't see. Look how much we're spreading Islam. Look, we've got the young white kids in the robe. Mashallah, inshallah, we will make him a Muslim, etc., etc. But if you scratch behind the surface, you can see the racial animosity. You can
Yeah,
just see
if
the
they're
racial.
talking to themselves, it's clear and day. It's only when they know it's an audience where this will shine a bad light on them, then they are getting back using this liberalist tactics, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I see that all the time. You
and
just have to watch their channels.
Yeah, and it's funny because I talked to Mark Collette just before I started the streets was setting up the stream for my band. I talked to Mark, and he's in such a good mood because he said, atheist Steve left and right, the liberals, they were like, oh, the conference wouldn't go well and stuff, and the conference was an amazing success. Mark said they had more people arrived and wiggled in that they had seats for.
Wow.
Almost 250
Wow.
odd people, right? So you can see that the group collective, everything we're working towards, which is collectivization, you can see that when you take one young guy out of the pack, they come at him, but they're never going to come at us as a group. And when you offer them a one-to-one debate, like mano a mano, the right weight, these creatures will run for the hills, right?
I'm
Because they
sorry
really
for
know.
you. You were sick, right, during that
My
time?
family, my family overrid any
Oh,
decisions. Yeah, there was just
yeah.
like my phone was taken away from me.
Oh.
Yeah, I sick.
But
Yeah,
you're healthy again now,
unfortunately,
feeling
yes.
better.
Unfortunately,
Okay.
so yeah, yeah, genau.
Unfortunately for the anti-whites, yeah,
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 yeah, and it's like so. The conference is a resounding success. Obviously, everyone there'll be streams of videos in the next few weeks of everyone's speeches and all that great stuff that's coming out to build the momentum. And you look at what we're fighting about. That's why I picked this video from this weekend. And you look at what you're fighting about. It doesn't matter how much you try to integrate these people, anything like that. They don't care. They don't love the English. They don't belong. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That black kid is probably second generation, right? And he was
mm,
any chance to laugh at the white kid, he immediately went back to his racialized state of nature, right? So we
yeah.
know that the truth is that integration doesn't work, right? Only the white guy suffers, right? In the West, right? That's the terrible thing. You might not want that to be true, but it is true. You see, so
They
even if
probably hate each other even
oh yeah,
more,
of course, yeah,
but
yeah,
of course we are the dominant force here in our countries, and they know if we get our way, they will be out, right? So they all ally against people like me, for example, or
of
people
course.
like us, better
Yeah.
to say.
Correct.
Yeah,
And what they would no, yeah, don't worry about me. And they particularly use the liberals to hide because the liberal things are only the only thing stopping the state of nature playing itself out.
yeah.
Right? We should be reversing the arrivals. They seem to be hell bent on the word arrival. And then again, the other thing that gets me is like, you're not English, mate. You speak in a fucking Bengali English accent. Why are you playing word games with an Englishman? If he wants to change his language, it's his fucking language. That kind of stuff. I see that as
Man, you know what we should do, Ralph? We should do a compilation of these feminists using the same arguments as these Muslims and show it to them in the park and see how they reacted. So all these Muslims are now feminists, right?
oh yeah, right.
It will hurt them. They hate when you get against their honor, right? This is how you can attack their honor.
Well,
Call them feminists. Call them feminists. Call
oh yeah,
these Muslims feminists.
but you see that the cause is slowly collapsing, right? So do you know the Guardian newspaper, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the liberal bastion. Yeah, there already now looks like the feminists have beaten the turfs because there's a civil war going on within the newspaper about because obviously the contradictions have run into each other. It looks like the feminists are now winning and the trans people are out. So this house of cards is going to come crumbling down within the left. Our job is to accelerate it.
Yeah.
All we just think is accelerate, accelerate. People say, why do you keep dividing, Ralph? Because divide and conquer is a fantastic game strategy to build things. Yeah, I mean, I play a lot of chess. I divide up the board in my head. I divide my enemy's pieces. Yeah, I'm constantly dividing, right? 'Cause
And
dividing,
it's not that we are dishonest with that. I mean, the division is clear. We are just showing where the division lies.
yeah.
We're just pointing it out.
And then accelerating the fault line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just drilling deep into that, like find that little crack and just keep putting a fucking sledgehammer in the crack and just smashing it, right? And this
Yeah.
is what you're seeing. And the same with we saw that. I don't know if you saw the first part of the stream. The atheist Steve, anti-white Steve, came out with a few tweets and that, and you can tell they're envious because the nationalist movement is just rising now in England. There's nothing that can stop it. Mark did a fantastic, and Laura, Mark and Laura did a fantastic job for the conference. What I hear from all the reports I got, it was just mental. It's really, really good. People were saying things like it never felt so good to be like white and together, and Mark was telling me people were just leaving their phones everywhere. It was a very high trust environment. No one was worried. There were wallets on the side, people leaving everything. There was no idea of theft. But if you go to the Sivnat Tommy things, people would nick your stuff. People would be
Yeah.
aggressive, violent, or drinking, and there's no such thing. People just leaving everything. And one woman apparently came up to Mark and said, "Oh, I just felt comfortable. I could just leave my drink there and never worry that someone might spike it." So you can see that cohesion with the high trust networks, and that's why.
Can you imagine how great it is in the summertime when you also have some small little 14 next generation kids playing there? You have your barbecue, right? All of this set up. It would be great.
It would be. Anyway, James has just informed me, and I was going to check out anyway the Unwatched is streaming. I mean, I don't want to clash for the very same collective reasons. So we should probably, guys, go over to Nick and watch the streaming.
Yeah, let's do it.
Unlock. Thanks very much for your time, and remember, a white pill a day keeps that replacement at bay, guys.
Exact.
Go white pill someone. Do it now.
Bye bye.
Schneller. Later.
Schnell.
Schnell. Bye, guys.
Godspeed.
Godspeed as well. Grüß Gott.
Bye bye. Servus.
Servus. Later, man.
Okay.
Bye, guys. Alright, how do I stop the stream if I'm remoting? Because I'm remote doubling. Alright, guys, head to Unwashed Man. I'll be streaming constantly on streets for the next week or so. And James, man, if you're still there, you know who you are. I have a chat to you, man. It was a fucking disaster, mate. So I need to apologize to you. Right, Nick Unwashed. Toodaloo, guys. Have a good day. I'm gonna leave this.